But in fact, there are 5 different reasons why the Gohonzon of the 3 great secret laws was not taught or established until Nichiren Daishonin's arrival in this world. And it's that I would like to go on to now. So I'm going to, for the moment, skip the next 4 pages, and we begin again on page 7. The reason why I'm doing that is I don't want to load you with too much heavy theory all at once. And I think it's better that in the next lecture we'll go back and do the pages we've missed out, which involves a much more detailed study of each of the 3 great secret laws. This we'll do next time. So today we'll go on with the 5 guides or reasons for propagation. So the purpose of these 5 guides or reasons is to explain why it was not the time to teach the Daigohonzon of the 3 great secret laws before Nichiren Daishonin's appearance, and why it is the teaching which is valid in every possible way for this age in which we live. So the 5 reasons for propagation are, firstly, recognition of the teaching; secondly, recognition of receptivity, as it's called; third, recognition of the time, which we've already mentioned; fourth, recognition of the nation or country; and 5, recognition of the correct order for propagating Buddhist teachings. So let's make a beginning on this particular principle.
The 5 guides, also known as the 5 reasons, provide the criteria for examining Nam-myoho Renge-kyo of the 3 great secret laws of Nichiren Daishonin. The 5 guides are: 1, the teaching; 2, receptivity; 3, the time; 4, the nation; and 5, the order for propagating Buddhist teachings. And they clarify that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the only true law in the latter day of the law. Nichiren Daishonin states in the teaching, receptivity, time, and nation, one who recognizes the 5 reasons in propagating Buddhism will be the teacher of Japan. This shows that one must clarify the 5 reasons when propagating the true law to save people. The 26th High Priest, Nichiren Shonin, also stresses this in his interpretation based on the law by saying the 3 great secret laws should be propagated in accordance with the 5 reasons.
Thank you. So when you study these 5 reasons in a moment, you'll probably feel they're very straightforward in a way, sort of commonsensical. But of course, this would not be so in the case of the person who first taught the teaching of the Gohonzon of the 3 great secret laws. So it was the wisdom of the Buddha, initially Shakyamuni, who knew for these 5 reasons that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo of the 3 great secret laws should not be taught until the age of Mappo. And likewise, it was Nichiren Daishonin who, through his self-enlightenment, came to the realization that the correct teaching for this age, the age that he was born into, or Mappo as it called, was the Gohonzon of 3 great secret laws, which he, as it were, extracted from the depths of the teaching called the Lotus Sutra. Okay, Bill?
Recognition of the teaching. Firstly, it is of primary importance to recognize the correct teaching. Nichiren Shonin states in his interpretation based on the law, to recognize the teaching means to understand the depth and shallowness as well as the superiority and inferiority of all teachings of Shakyamuni. Tiantai judged all the Buddha's sacred teachings by the 5 periods and 8 teachings, and our founder clarified the 80,000 teachings by the 3-fold secret teaching. Therefore, we see that to recognize the teaching indicates an ascertaining of the highest teachings among all religions, philosophies, moralities, and ways of life through judging whether their tenets are right or wrong, deep or shallow, superior or inferior. In the final analysis, this should be applied to Buddhism. While Tiantai divided Shakyamuni's teachings into 5 periods and 8 teachings to explain that the Lotus Sutra is the most superior sutra, Nichiren Daishonin proved Nam-myoho Renge-kyo of the 3 great secret laws to be the greatest teaching in the latter day of the law by means of the 5-fold comparison, the 5 stages of 3-term comparison, and the 3-fold secret teaching. The teaching Receptivity, Time, and Nation states, one who knows that the Lotus Sutra is the greatest sutra, king among all the sutras, is one who realizes the teaching. This means that to understand that the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo of the 3 great secret laws, and that it alone is the supreme law, is to correctly recognize the teaching.
Thank you. So I don't want to go into all those complicated things like the stages of the 3-term comparison and the 3-fold secret teaching and so on tonight. We're going to have to tackle them sometime, but not today. What I want to emphasize here is the practicality of this, or the meaningfulness of this first guide for propagation, recognition of the teaching, to us today. And it's all really covered by that sentence from the Gosho, one who knows that the Lotus Sutra is the greatest sutra, king among all the sutras, is the one who realizes the teaching. And it's a strange thing, isn't it, that even though at times, of course, we have doubts, when we shakubuku, when we try to teach someone else something about Nichiren Shoshu Buddhism, those doubts seem to disappear like magic. And the reason for this, of course, is that the act of shakubuku can only be done in the state of Buddha. Though you don't realize it, that is the state you're in. And therefore, your conviction in the validity of the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is flowing from your life without you almost knowing it. So we do know when we teach others that the Lotus Sutra is the greatest sutra, king among all the sutras. The Lotus Sutra, of course, meaning as it always does in Nichiren Daishonin's writings, the Gohonzon. Of course, in order to be able to teach others, we must know that it's the correct teaching for this time. And we can only know that through proving it ourselves. Nevertheless, even when we've got one benefit, however small, it's enough to enable one to teach others. Because even that one benefit is proof that it is the king of all the sutras. It's actual proof of the validity of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in our lives. We want to, of course, more and more understand that it will solve all our human problems today. And this we do understand because its power enables us to have actual proof in this life. We can apply it, the power of the Gohonzon, to every single human problem that we have. And we can always prove the power of that teaching working in overcoming that problem. So this gives us conviction that this is the king of the sutras. It's the right teaching for this age. If it can solve my human problems, of course it can solve your human problems or any other human problems. So in the Gosho, Nichiren Daishonin said words to the effect that even if they offered him the emperorship of Japan, if he would chant the Nembutsu instead of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and even if the ruling authorities said that they would behead his parents, never would he give up his teachings unless a wiser man proved him to be wrong. That's a very important quotation. In other words, doubts are inevitable, but always we must challenge them. And then we'll get the answer we need. We have to prove, don't we, through actual proof, that there is no greater teaching than this. And never should we give up unless a wiser man than Nichiren Daishonin proves Nichiren Daishonin to be wrong. This is the spirit. We should have a seeking mind. We shouldn't deny our doubts. We should challenge them. But never should we give up until a wiser man proves Nichiren Daishonin wrong. Okay?
Receptivity here means the life tendency of the people, their innate quality and potential to believe in Buddhism. In other words, to recognize the receptivity means to know what religion people are seeking and by what teaching they can attain enlightenment, indestructible happiness. The importance of comprehending receptivity is stressed in the teaching Receptivity, Time and Nation as those who propagate Buddhism must without fail realize receptivity. The receptivity in the time of Shakyamuni Buddha and in the latter day of the law differs. The people of Shakyamuni's time had already formed good causes in their previous existences by carrying out Buddhist austerities. On the contrary, the people of the latter day of the law have been able to create no good causes. They need to receive the seed of Buddhahood directly into their life, through which they can awaken to the Buddha nature inherent in the deepest core of their being. Nichiren Shonin states in Interpretation Based on the Law, all people in the latter day of the law have no good causes formed through their previous existences, but they have the receptivity to immediately attain enlightenment by being implanted with the original seed of Buddhahood in this life. The original seed of Buddhahood for the people in the latter day of the law is Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, the mystic law hidden in the depths of the Juryo chapter. Thus, the correct recognition of receptivity is that the people in the latter day have receptivity which accords perfectly with Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism.
Thank you. So there are two aspects to this matter of receptivity. One is comparatively shallow, and the other is quite deep. So first of all, from the shallower point of view, of course, in order to accept the teaching, the people must be yearning for it in their hearts. In order to embrace it wholeheartedly, they must be yearning for it. This would be because of the faults and the ills and the delusions of this world that we live in. So in the Gosho it says that people say that Shakyamuni came into this world to save the people. This is wrong, it says. Shakyamuni came into this world because the people called him in their hearts, through their yearning for a happier life. In the Gosho, as you know, there's the famous paragraph about the bird in the cage. The bird in the cage that calls, and through calling out, the wild birds come and gather around the cage. And the bird makes one last desperate attempt to escape. In other words, to break out of the chains of its karma, its unhappy karma, and attain Buddhahood. So it's the people who call the Buddha, just the same as you called the person who shakabuku'd you. You didn't ring him up. You didn't yell at him from the window. But in your heart you called him or her. So of course, we know that true Buddhism is right because it suits us. We know that it satisfies our call. The more we practice, the more it answers our questions, and provides us with benefit, and we actually see proof of it changing our unhappy karma. We have been through the experience and found it. Other people, of course, that we try to teach haven't yet been through that experience. But because they are calling for it, they will be receptive to it. So some people are not receptive. Those people whose karma is still too heavy for them to listen or judge. But other people are ready, and they will accept and embrace it. This is all a matter of receptivity. But the deeper aspect is referred to in the middle paragraph there, which may seem a little confusing. The receptivity in the time of Shakyamuni Buddha and in the latter day of the law differs. The people of Shakyamuni's time had already formed good causes in their previous existences by carrying out Buddhist austerities. On the contrary, the people of the latter day of the law have been able to create no good causes. They need to receive the seed of Buddhahood directly into their life, through which they can awaken to the Buddha nature inherent in the deepest core of their being. So I was talking earlier about Shakyamuni's disciples practicing lifetime after lifetime, over eons and eons. And if they slipped and made an error and slandered, they all had to go back to square one, rather like snakes and ladders. Constant struggle to elevate their lives over eons of time, lifetime after lifetime. But the people in the age of Mappo are different. This is what Buddhism teaches and taught from Shakyamuni's day to this day. This is a different age. This is an age of Mappo, which to begin with is filled with confusion, because the people are born with the three poisons in their lives. The three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance. So why should this be? And why should it be that we didn't make the causes for enlightenment in the way that the people born in Shakyamuni's time did? The answer to that is that we chose to be born in Mappo. We chose to be born in the mud of the three poisons of society. We chose it because that is the only way to prove the power of the Gohonzon. By taking our lives out of that mud, or the poisonous, stinking mud of Mappo, and elevating our lives and attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime. Therefore, those people who are born in the age of Mappo must have a totally different and more powerful teaching than was perfectly satisfactory and adequate for the age of Shakyamuni. They have to receive the seed in this lifetime and then attain Buddhahood in one. And this is what the purpose of the Daigohonzon and the three great secret laws is. So in other words, we have all, of course, known the Gohonzon before. We were with Nichiren Daishonin in Kuon Ganjo. The Gosho says, in lifetime after lifetime, you will be born with your master. But we promised that we would undertake the difficult task of spreading the law in the age of Mappo, amidst the three poisons that afflict the world at that time. This is our mission as Bodhisattvas of the earth. When we die, we shall probably be chanting to be reborn into the age of Mappo, to continue the battle against the three poisons, and to have another victorious life when we prove the power of the Gohonzon to everybody. This is our desire. When we've had a victory in this life, we shall feel like doing it again. This is our task, though sometimes when we're in the midst of the three poisons, it's difficult to believe. This is our purpose in life. So everybody who is born in the age of Mappo, in the whole wide world, are potentially bodhisattvas of the earth. But it depends upon their karma whether they'll be receptive to the teaching or not. So, of course, those with heavy karma who can't receive the teaching is because for a time they sunk. They couldn't get out of the swamp of the three poisons, and they committed slander in a previous life. That's why in this life there are certain people who cannot accept. But later they will, as they work their way on through lifetime after lifetime. Because it is the mission of the bodhisattvas of the earth to receive Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. So this is why we're here in this hall now. We chose to be born in this age of the three poisons and to teach Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. So that is why it says there that we made no good causes. That is to say, we're totally different to Shakyamuni's disciples who practice bodhisattva austerities lifetime after lifetime, exactly as Shakyamuni explained in the Lotus Sutra. Our role, our age, the state of development of this world is totally different to what it was in Shakyamuni's day and before his time. This is the age in the development of this world when three poisons rise up, the world losing its freshness, entering its eon of decline. This is when, in the midst of those three poisons, caused by the very beginnings of the decline of this planet, that the bodhisattvas of the earth must appear in order to teach Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, to battle and prove that they have the key to activating life force sufficient to overcome the poisons of this age, the poisons which are inevitable in growth. Just like as a tree or a plant begins to wilt, it can be attacked by insects and grubs and beetles. The same in the vast organism which is called the world. So bodhisattvas of the earth means from the very earth of life, from the very midst of those three poisons, the bodhisattvas appear.
Recognition of the time. Time in itself is the movement and the changes of the world in which we live. All the workings of the human being change in accordance with the flow of time. In this sense, we can say that everything is included in time, and it constitutes the originating point of the world as we know it. In reference to the importance of recognizing the time, the selection of time says, in the study of Buddhism, the first thing to learn is the time. And the teaching, receptivity, time, and nation states, those who spread Buddhism must realize the time without fail.
Thank you. I'm not going to ask Bill to read the whole of that, because we've already brought this point of the time out quite often in this lecture so far. But suffice it to say again that Shakyamuni divided the time after his death into those three periods, Shoho, Zoho, and Mappo. And it is only in Mappo that the supreme law appears. And you remember I read a quotation, in the fifth 500 years after my death, Shakyamuni said in the Lotus Sutra, accomplish worldwide Kosen Rufu and never allow its flow to cease. So this question of the time, of course, is particularly important in a Buddhist country. In Japan, which is a Buddhist country containing a huge number of sects who are practicing to one degree or another the earlier teachings of Buddhism, Buddhism of Shakyamuni, it's vital that a member understands the importance of the time and is able to debate and persuade and argue with someone who is practicing Shakyamuni's Buddhism. But for us also, it has an importance, this question of the time, doesn't it? The ground, as it were, must be ripe for something to grow. And I think we all feel that there is no doubt that the time is right in the UK for Buddhism to grow. The higher religions of the past are declining. The other religions or isms, such as materialism and communism, have lost their edge, haven't they? People are disillusioned with materialism. They're disillusioned and petrified at the way the technological age is progressing. Even communism is no longer communism in communist countries, as originally envisaged by Marx and Lenin. So there is disillusionment everywhere. Therefore, very much the time is right to spread the teaching of the three great secret laws. You read on number 9, maybe? Number 10.
Recognition of the nation. Each country and society has different geographical and natural conditions. Politics, economics, education, culture, and ideologies also differ. To recognize the nation implies giving deep consideration to the method of propagating the law and to develop the teaching by properly grasping the social situations and conditions of each nation. The teaching Receptivity, Time and Nation says, concerning the nation, one must propagate Buddhism according to the nation. He must deeply consider whether Japan is entirely a nation of Hinayana, Mahayana, or of both teachings being practiced together.
Thank you. It's as far as we need go tonight on that particular paragraph. So this is, I think, quite easy to understand, that in order to be of any value, a religion must be able to adapt to the customs and culture of the country in which it is being taught, without, of course, weakening itself in any way. In other words, the true religion must be universal. And, of course, long after the Gosho were written, only in the last 20 years, Nichiren Shoshu Buddhism has gone overseas and is spreading in all the countries of the world, proving that it is able to give happiness to people no matter what their custom or their cultures. This also applies to the method of teaching, this question of the nation. That is to say, in Buddhist nations it may be necessary to use shakubuku in its literal sense. Shakubuku meaning that you have to, through strong argument, really shake a person out of their traditional beliefs in Shakyamuni Buddhism. Otherwise, they will never move. They'll continue to suffer. On the other hand, in a non-Buddhist country, you use the system which is called shoju, which is through debate and persuasion, through argument which a member patiently engages another person with. They can persuade them to have a try, to have a go. This is very different, tackling a person like this, to a person whose whole life and family, generations and generations into the past, have practiced a particular, in a particular sect of Shakyamuni's Buddhism. So deeper still, of course, the vital point was that Nichiren Daishonin's teaching should be acceptable to the Japanese, because that's where it began. That was where he was born. And it happened in the very rhythm of life, of course, that the circumstances in Japan were such as to make it absolutely ripe to receive these teachings. As you know, the period when Nichiren Daishonin was living was the worst period for disaster, natural disasters in all Japanese history. And of course, it's interesting that 700 years nearly later, the period when it really blossomed and spread was in the aftermath of the destruction of World War II. Okay.
Recognition of the order for propagating Buddhist teachings. As time passes, the human mind, as well as social and cultural situations, becomes more complex. All aspects of the world progress from shallow to deep, from the simple to manifold, and towards a higher development. Prevention or reversion of this movement will only lead to confusion and destruction. The teaching Receptivity, Time and Nation states, one must spread the subsequent law only after recognizing the law which was prevalent before. As is clear from this passage, when we propagate the law, we must fully understand the minds of the people in order to know what they are seeking. If we propagate a teaching which is not applicable to the period and inferior to the prevailing law, we will be unable to save people and Buddhism will be demolished. We must spread the correct law with a firm grasp of the history of Buddhist propagation. Nichiren Shonin states in Interpretation based on the law, now in the latter day of the law, one must spread the truly essential law. To recognize this is to realize the order of propagation of the law. In our time, to spread only Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism indicates recognition of the order for propagation of the law. When we understand the 5 guides for propagation, it becomes clear that to propagate Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism correctly is of great importance.
Thank you. So, of course, in a Buddhist country, it's essential that you can totally justify, by means of the 3 proofs, that the Buddhism of Nichiren Daishonin, or the 3 great secret laws, is the Buddhism for the age of Mappo. And it is perfectly possible to debate this totally from a literary and historical or documentary point of view, as well as from a theoretical point of view, as well as from the point of view of actual proof of the power of the teachings to give people happiness. But that, fortunately, isn't our task. So our task is to realize and be convinced that this really is the suitable teaching for this age. And in this respect, those first few lines, as time passes, the human mind, as well as the social and cultural situations, become more complex. Nothing is going to go backwards. The world isn't going to get more simple. The world is going to get more and more complex. As man develops higher and higher standards of scientific research, technological research, and so on, nothing is going to put the clock back. If anyone tried to put the clock back, as it says in this paragraph, it would merely cause total confusion. Because through a process of evolvement, revolution and evolution, this is the state the world has reached now in its development, and that development will continue. It's no good saying that people should stop going out into space. People will go on going out into space until they can go further and further and further. This is the nature of man, always wanting to be seeking. It's the nature of man always wanting to be inventing. It's the nature of man to wish to progress. So we must have a religion that can provide harmony as well as the driving force for this amazing creativity which human beings possess. And I think we all believe totally that this practice of the 3 great secret laws is capable of coping with these amazing developments. It has an incredible relationship with science or medicine or any other field, which is in fact far in advance in its understanding than the science itself. So, of course, the world family in itself is going to be a complex thing, much more complex than a Stone Age family tribe or clan. The very thought of the complexities of creating one world, one family, is in itself unbelievably difficult and complex by its very nature. So we have to have a religion that has the power and the philosophy to cope with such complications. So we need something, don't we, which is infinite and stable, absolute and unchanging. The power of which has no limit, the perception of which has no boundaries, and the wisdom of which arises from an inexhaustible source. And I believe in my whole heart that this power and this wisdom, this infinite stability, can't be found except in this amazingly dynamic teaching. So, from my point of view, I'm quite convinced that I'm practicing the right religion for this particular age, and I hope you are too. Thanks very much for listening. Thank you very much. Thank you.